The dust never settles in the Old West. Neither does the blood. And sometimes, when the sun bleeds crimson across the endless horizon, destiny rides into town wearing spurs and carrying secrets that could change everything. This is the story of a boy who had nothing left to lose, and a woman who thought she'd already lost it all. Before we ride into this tale of survival and redemption, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when two broken souls find each other in the most unforgiving land on earth. The Arizona Territory stretched endlessly under a merciless sun, its red earth cracked like an old man's weathered hands. Heat waves danced above the desert floor, creating mirages that promised water but delivered only more dust and despair. It was in this godforsaken landscape that 12-year-old Tommy Brennan ran for his life. His bare feet, cut and bleeding, pounded against the scorching ground as he stumbled through sagebrush and over jagged rocks. Behind him, the thundering hooves of 3 horses grew closer with each desperate step. The boy's lungs burned like fire, his throat parched from the desert heat and terror that gripped his heart like a vice. "There's the little rat!" shouted Jake Morrison, the leader of the pursuing bounty hunters. His voice carried across the wasteland like the crack of a whip. "He can't run much further." Tommy's legs gave out, sending him tumbling into a shallow ravine. Dust clouds erupted around his small frame as he rolled to a stop against a cluster of barrel cacti. Blood trickled from fresh cuts on his arms and face, mixing with the dirt and sweat that covered his trembling body. His torn shirt hung in tatters, evidence of 3 weeks of desperate survival in the unforgiving wilderness. "Please," Tommy whispered to the empty sky, his voice barely audible above his ragged breathing. "Please, someone, anyone." The 3 bounty hunters dismounted at the edge of the ravine, their spurs jingling like death bells in the afternoon silence. Jake Morrison was a mountain of a man, his face scarred from countless bar fights and his eyes cold as winter steel. His companions, the Dalton brothers, were equally ruthless, men who'd kill for a silver dollar and sleep soundly afterward. Their horses snorted and stamped, sensing the violence that hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. "End of the line, boy," Jake called down, his hand resting on the grip of his Colt .45. "Your uncle wants you back real bad. Dead or alive, the bounty's the same to us." Tommy pressed himself against the rocky wall of the ravine, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. His uncle, Silas Brennan, had murdered Tommy's parents for their small ranch and the modest savings they'd hidden beneath the floorboards. When Tommy had witnessed the brutal deed and escaped into the night, Silas had put a price on his head, claiming the boy had stolen from him and was dangerous. As Jake began his descent into the ravine, the sound of a single horse approaching made all 3 men freeze. The hoofbeats were steady, measured, the rhythm of someone who rode with purpose rather than haste. A figure appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the blazing sun like a dark angel of judgment. The approaching rider seemed to materialize from the heat waves themselves, as if the desert had conjured a guardian from its very essence. The rider was tall and lean, dressed in black leather chaps and a long duster coat that fluttered in the desert wind. A wide-brimmed hat cast shadows across features that remained hidden, but the twin Colt peacemakers hanging low on each hip spoke volumes about the stranger's intentions. "Well, well," Jake muttered, climbing back up from the ravine. "Looks like we got ourselves some company, boys." The mysterious rider approached slowly, stopping about 30 yards away. When the stranger finally spoke, her voice carried across the desert with quiet authority, and it was unmistakably female. "That's far enough, gentlemen," she said, her hands resting casually near her weapons. "Beautiful day for a ride, isn't it? Shame to spoil it with unnecessary violence." Jake's eyes narrowed as he studied the woman. Stories had been circulating through saloons and trading posts about a female gunslinger known only as the Stranger, a ghost who appeared when least expected and disappeared just as quickly. "This ain't your concern, lady," Jake called out. "We're conducting legal business here." The woman's laugh was dry as desert wind. "Legal business? Is that what we're calling child hunting these days?" From his hiding place in the ravine, Tommy watched in amazement as this mysterious woman faced down 3 armed men without showing an ounce of fear. "Listen here, stranger," Jake growled. "You best mount up and ride on. This boy's wanted for theft and murder." "Justice." The woman's voice carried a note of dark amusement. "Tell me, what exactly did this child steal? And who did he supposedly murder?" Tommy couldn't contain himself any longer. "That's a lie," he screamed from the ravine. "Uncle Silas killed them. I saw him do it. He shot my pa in the back and strangled my ma with his bare hands." The woman's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, and suddenly the air around her seemed to crackle with deadly intent. "Is that so?" she said softly. "Well then, that changes things considerably." "Please, sister, save me," Tommy cried out, his young voice carrying all the desperation and hope his heart could hold. The woman's head turned slightly toward the sound of his voice, and for just a moment, something flickered across her features, a memory, perhaps, or a pain too deep for words. "You heard the boy," she said quietly. "He's asking for help, and I've never been one to ignore a cry for help." The silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. The woman in black stood motionless as a statue, but her eyes tracked every micro-movement of the three men surrounding her. Tommy could feel the tension building like pressure before a thunderstorm, the very air seeming to vibrate with impending violence. "Last chance, lady," Jay called out. "Walk away now, and nobody has to die today." The woman's laugh was soft and humorless. "You're right about one thing, Morrison. Nobody has to die today, but that choice is entirely up to you." Jake's eyes widened. She knew his name. That meant she'd been tracking them, or at least knew enough about their business to be dangerous. Jake Morrison, wanted in 3 territories for murder, robbery, and assault. The Dalton brothers, Charlie and Frank, escaped from Yuma prison last spring. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "Between the 3 of you, there's enough bounty money to buy a small ranch. Funny how the tables turn, isn't it?" Charlie Dalton was sweating profusely now, his confidence evaporating like morning dew in the desert heat. "Jake, maybe we should listen to her. You want to know who I am?" she continued. "I'm the woman who put Bloody Bill Henderson in the ground outside Tombstone. I'm the one who cleaned out the Ramirez gang single-handed in El Paso." Frank Dalton's nerve broke first. "Jake, this is crazy. That's her. That's the stranger. We heard what she did to those Comancheros." The woman smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Tommy had ever seen. "3," she said quietly. Jake's hand moved toward his gun, desperation overriding his survival instincts. 2. The Dalton brothers exchanged panic glances, their hands hovering uncertainly over their weapons. 1. Time exploded into motion. Jake Morrison was fast, but the stranger was something beyond fast. She was inevitable. Her right-hand gun appeared in her grip as if by magic, the barrel already aligned with Jake's chest before his weapon had fully cleared its holster. The thunder of gunfire rolled across the desert like the voice of an angry god. Jake's shot went wide, his aim spoiled by the .45 caliber bullet that punched through his shoulder and spun him around. The Dalton brothers found themselves staring down the barrels of both their guns, their own weapons only halfway drawn. "I'd strongly advise against finishing that motion, gentlemen," she said calmly, as if discussing the weather rather than holding 2 men at gunpoint. Charlie Dalton's hand shot skyward, so fast he nearly lost his balance. "Don't shoot. We give up." "Smart choice," the stranger said, holstering her left-hand weapon while keeping the right trained on the group. "Now, very slowly, remove your gun belts and toss them away." The brothers complied quickly, their gun belts hitting the dirt with metallic clanks. Jake Morrison writhed on the ground, clutching his wounded shoulder and cursing through gritted teeth. "You're going to help your friend onto his horse, and the 3 of you are going to ride out of here," she told the Daltons. "If I ever see you again, I'll track you down and finish what we started here today." "This ain't over," Jake mumbled through his pain, blood seeping between his fingers. The stranger's gun appeared in her hand again with that same supernatural speed. "Would you like to test that theory right now, Morrison?" Jake's face went pale beneath his tan, and he shook his head quickly. The 3 men rode away slowly, Jake swaying dangerously in his saddle while the Dalton brothers flanked him to keep him from falling. Only then did she turn toward the ravine, where Tommy, still crouched in hiding. "You can come out now, son," she called gently, her voice completely different from the cold authority she'd used with the bounty hunters. "They're gone, and they won't be coming back." Tommy climbed slowly out of the ravine, his legs shaking from fear and adrenaline. Up close, he could see that the stranger was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. "Are you hurt?" she asked, kneeling down to examine his cuts and bruises with surprising gentleness. "No, ma'am. Just scared." She nodded understanding. "Fear's not a bad thing, son. It keeps you alive." She pulled a canteen from her saddle and offered it to him. "What's your name, boy?" "Tommy Brennan, ma'am. And thank you for saving me." "We all die eventually, Tommy. The trick is making sure it means something when we do." She studied his face carefully. "Tell me about your uncle. Tell me what really happened to your parents." As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Tommy found himself sitting beside a small campfire, sharing his story with the most dangerous woman in the Arizona Territory. The stranger, who had finally introduced herself as Sarah McKenna, listened without interruption, her weathered hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee. "Uncle Silas always hated my pa," Tommy said, poking at the fire with a stick. "Said pa was weak for trying to make an honest living. 3 weeks ago, Uncle Silas came to visit. He'd been drinking and started arguing with pa about selling the ranch to a mining company." Sarah sipped coffee from a battered tin cup, her eyes never leaving the boy's face. She'd heard countless stories of betrayal and violence during her years on the frontier, but something about Tommy's quiet pain struck a chord deep within her. "Pa refused to sell. Said the ranch was our home, and homes weren't for selling. That's when Uncle Silas got real angry, started throwing things around and yelling about missed opportunities." The fire crackled and popped, sending sparks dancing into the darkening sky like tiny stars seeking their place in the heavens. "I was supposed to be asleep, but I heard them arguing again, so I snuck out to listen. That's when I saw Uncle Silas pull out his gun." Tommy's voice broke, the memory still fresh and painful. "He shot Pa in the back while Pa was walking away. Ma started screaming, and Uncle Silas grabbed her by the throat." Sarah's jaw tightened as rage built in her chest, her knuckles whitening around the coffee cup. After Ma stopped moving, Uncle Silas found the money Pa had saved, about $300 hidden under the floorboards. Then he saw me watching from the doorway, and his eyes went cold as winter. "What did you do?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew. "I ran. Uncle Silas chased me, but his horse threw a shoe about a mile out. The next day, he told everyone I'd killed my parents and stolen their money. Put a $50 bounty on my head." Sarah stared into the fire, her mind working through the implications. $50 was enough to attract every desperate outlaw within 100 miles. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Sarah," Tommy said quietly. "How did you become who you are?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, debating how much to reveal. "I wasn't always a gunfighter. Once upon a time, I was just a schoolteacher in a little town called Cedar Creek, up in Colorado Territory." Tommy's eyes widened in surprise. "You were a teacher?" Sarah smiled sadly, the memory bringing both warmth and pain. "I taught reading, writing, and arithmetic to children not much older than you. Had a little house with a garden and plans to marry the local doctor." "What happened?" "A gang of outlaws called the Red River Raiders rode into town. They took over for 3 weeks, terrorized everyone, turned our peaceful community into a living nightmare. My fiancé, Dr. James Morrison, tried to organize the men to fight back. Their leader made an example of him, shot him down in the street like a rabid dog." "I'm sorry," Tommy whispered, understanding the weight of loss. "I buried James, sold everything I owned, and used the money to buy these guns and learn how to use them. I tracked the raiders for 2 years, following their trail of destruction across 3 territories. Found them holed up in a canyon down in New Mexico Territory." "Did you kill them?" Sarah's expression grew cold as winter steel. "Every last one. After that, I just kept writing. Wherever I went, I found people who needed help, people being preyed upon by those with more guns and fewer scruples. Is that why you helped me? You reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, that sometimes the best way to honor the dead is to protect the living. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the desert night wrapping around them like a protective blanket. What are we going to do about Uncle Silas? Sarah's hand moved instinctively to the grip of her gun. We're going to pay him a visit, and we're going to make sure he tells the truth about what really happened to your parents. You mean you'll help me clear my name? I mean I'll help you get justice, Tommy. Real justice. 3 days later, Sarah and Tommy crested a hill overlooking the Brennan ranch, and what they saw made Tommy's heart sink like a stone in deep water. The modest homestead where he'd spent his childhood was barely recognizable. A large wooden sign had been erected near the main gate. Property of Desert Mountain Mining Company, no trespassing. He already sold it, Tommy whispered, his voice thick with grief and rage. He murdered my parents and sold our home like it was nothing more than cattle at market. Sarah studied the scene through field glasses, noting the details that spoke of recent activity. Looks like your uncle has company. I count at least 4 horses, maybe 5. Silas Brennan stepped onto the porch, a big man in expensive clothes that spoke of recent wealth. 2 businessmen emerged behind him, shaking hands before driving away in a buggy. A 4th man appeared wearing a deputy's badge, Pete Hawkins, a corrupt lawman Sarah recognized from wanted posters. This complicates things, Sarah murmured. Your uncle's got legal protection now, so we can't do anything. Sarah smiled grimly, her mind already working through the possibilities. We just need to be smart about it. Tell me, does your uncle have any weaknesses? He drinks. A lot. And he's got a terrible temper when he's been drinking. Pa always said Uncle Silas couldn't keep his mouth shut when he was drunk. That's how he ended up in Yuma prison the first time. Perfect. We're going to wait until dark, then pay your uncle a visit. But first, we need to make a stop in town. They rode into Millerville as the sun was setting, painting the dusty main street in shades of orange and red. Sarah entered the sheriff's office alone, leaving Tommy with the horses and strict instructions to keep his head down. Sheriff William Crawford was a man in his 50s, with graying hair and steady demeanor. Evening, miss. Something I could help you with. My name is Sarah McKenna, and I'm here about the Brennan boy, the one with the bounty on his head. Crawford's expression grew wary, his hand instinctively moving closer to his gun. You a bounty hunter? I'm someone interested in making sure justice is served properly. Tell me, what do you know about the murders of Robert and Mary Brennan? Boy killed his parents for their savings. His uncle found the bodies and reported the crime. Pretty straightforward case, according to my deputy. Did you examine the crime scene yourself? Deputy Hawkins handled the investigation. Sometimes the simple explanation is the right one. Sarah's eyes narrowed dangerously. Pete Hawkins, the man run out of Tombstone for corruption. Crawford shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Man deserves a second chance. Pete's been doing good work here. Did you know that Silas Brennan is a convicted felon? 2 years in Yuma for armed robbery? Did you know the ranch was sold to a mining company just days after the murders, with Silas pocketing a fortune? Look, miss, I don't know what you're driving at. I'm driving at the possibility that you've got the wrong man, Sheriff. What if I told you I could get Silas Brennan to confess to the real crime? Crawford studied her carefully, weighing his options. If you can get a confession, I'll arrest him. But if you're wrong, I'll arrest you too. Fair enough. That night, they approached the ranch on foot, using the darkness as cover. Sarah explained her plan. Tommy would surrender himself, claiming he was tired of running. Silas would want to gloat, and Sarah would be listening for his confession. Tommy walked to the front door and knocked, his heart pounding like a war drum. Uncle Silas? It's me. It's Tommy. I want to come home. Silas opened the door, his face showing cruel satisfaction mixed with surprise. Well, well, look what the cat dragged in. Come on in, nephew, Silas said with a smile that made Tommy's skin crawl. We've got a lot to talk about. Sarah pressed herself against the wall beneath the window, listening intently as the trap began to unfold. "You know, boy," Silas was saying, his voice already slurred with whiskey, "I have to admit, you lasted longer than I thought. 3 weeks in the desert, that takes real guts." "I'm tired of running, Uncle Silas. I just want this nightmare to be over." "Oh, it'll be over soon enough. Soon as I turn you in for that bounty, this whole mess will be behind us both." "Tell me something, boy," Silas continued, his voice growing more animated. "Did you really think you could get away with killing your own parents?" "I didn't kill them. You did." Silas burst into laughter, the sound echoing through the night air. "You got brass, I'll give you that. You want to know the truth. Your father was a fool and your mother was weak, and they both got exactly what they deserved." Sarah tensed, her hand moving to her gun as the confession began. "Your pa had something I needed, this ranch, with all that silver underneath it. But he was too stubborn and too stupid to see the golden opportunity right in front of him." "So you killed him for it," Tommy said steadily, playing his part perfectly. "I did what needed to be done. Put a bullet in his back while he was walking away, just like the coward he always was. And when your ma started screaming, well, I couldn't have her running to the sheriff, now could I?" Sarah had heard enough. She kicked open the front door and stepped into the room, both guns trained on the 2 men inside. "That's a fascinating story, Silas," she said calmly. "Mind if I ask you to repeat it for the sheriff?" Silas spun around, his face going white with shock. Deputy Hawkins lunged for his rifle, but froze when Sarah's gun swiveled to cover him. Through the open door, Sheriff Crawford appeared with 2 deputies, their guns drawn and ready. "Sarah McKenna, you in there." "I'm here, Sheriff, and I've got your confession, recorded word for word." "Silas Brennan, you're under arrest for the murders of Robert and Mary Brennan." "This is ridiculous," Silas protested, his voice cracking with desperation. "You can't arrest me based on a word of some gunfighter." "Actually, I can," Crawford said grimly, "especially when that gunfighter happens to be wearing a recording device that captured every word you just said." Sarah opened her coat, revealing a small gadget that had captured every word of Silas's drunken confession. As the deputies led the criminals away, Tommy ran to Sarah and threw his arms around her waist. "Thank you for believing in me when nobody else would." "What happens now?" Tommy asked as they watched the sheriff's wagon disappear into the night. "Now you get to decide what kind of man you want to become. You've got your name back, and you'll probably get your ranch back too." "What about you? Where will you go?" Sarah looked out at the vast desert stretching away into the darkness. "Somewhere out there, other innocents were in danger. I'll keep riding. There's always someone who needs help, always another fight worth fighting." "Will I ever see you again?" Sarah smiled and ruffled his hair. "Maybe someday. But for now, you've got a life to rebuild. Make it count, Tommy. Make it worthy of the parents who loved you." As the sun rose over the Arizona territory, Sarah McKenna rode away from the Brennan Ranch. Behind her, a boy who had lost everything was beginning to rebuild his life. Ahead of her, the endless frontier beckoned with new challenges. She was the stranger, the guardian angel of the Old West, and her work was never done. And there you have it, folks. The incredible tale of Tommy Brennan and the mysterious gunfighter who saved his life. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption in the American frontier, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got more amazing stories from the Old West coming your way. Don't forget to like and share this video. Until next time, keep riding toward justice.